Dijak, thank you so very much for joining me here again today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You know what? This past year has been crazy for you. Whenever I see a clip or a photo of you on Twitter, it just looks like you're having fun. So how fun have the indies been for you?
It's been very fun, very fun. I have a lot more control, and anybody who's ever been in a position where they gain more of that, obviously that ends up with more, especially in the world of professional wrestling, right, where there's so many things that are out of our control as talent. It's nice to be able to say like almost every single night I go out there, like I can do the things I want to do, mostly in ring, right? Do the things I want to do, try the stuff I want to try, experiment, be creative, things like that. So it's really a wonderful gift for the creative portion of my brain as it pertains to pro wrestling.
And I feel like as a fan, we watch these talent that don't get used every single week on WWE, whether it's AEW as well. And we just watch them, we're like, they must be so hungry sitting at home. And so to finally see you, right, you were on main event for a while, and then you ended up going to NXT. You had a great run, and then you just got released. So that first week being released, you showed up in Blitzkrieg,
Yep.
cut this crazy promo, and we could just tell that you were hungry.
Yeah, the promo I think was a bit overzealous. I was swearing quite a bit in it. I don't even remember what I said, and it probably wasn't the strongest promo of all time. I don't even know that I knew I was going to cut it. Maybe I did. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, it's funny in terms of pro wrestling. I actually have a very good memory, like in terms of like who I've wrestled and what moves I've done and what what the finish of a match was, things like that. In terms of promos, it's always difficult to remember unless there's like video evidence. But but yeah, no, the run since then has been crazy. I've wrestled for Blitzkrieg itself probably maybe more than anywhere else. I think I just did my fourth appearance, third or fourth appearance there, maybe even fifth. I'd have to go back and count them up. But yeah, they've been great to me. I have another match for them coming up on. I don't know if I'm gonna get the date right. I'm gonna guess June 28th sounds right against Bryce Donovan. I think we just released that, so I just released that promo, and that promo is awesome, right? I feel like I've been given a lot of leeway in terms of my creativity when it comes to promos and stuff, and I feel like I'm continuing to evolve like dramatically in that department. Um, because promos are all about comfort, right? A lot of it is like, who are you? Who's talking? Things like that. And that becomes a lot easier when the answer becomes myself, right? Unequivocally myself, right? As opposed to a character you're playing or something like that, which involves a more deep dive into who that character is and why they're speaking and things like that. So yeah, it's a continuous evolution, and both in ring and on the microphone, and from a character standpoint. So yeah, I'm having a great time and I'm enjoying the process quite a bit.
And being able to see Dijak versus all of these indie talent, I think is just amazing. So, who have been some of your favorite matches so far? I watched the one versus Matt Riddle, amazing. The one versus Zilla, he's going to be a superstar one
I
day.
like how you start with Matt Riddle, a guy I've wrestled
I know.
5 million times throughout every promotion we've ever been in.
He's good though. He's good, right? But
Yes, he is great. Yeah,
yeah.
I love wrestling Matt. We've again, like I mentioned, we were actually I was wrestling Matt at a time a lot when NXT was gearing up to I don't know how many people know this or not. NXT, here I'll give you some breaking scoops that I've never seen before reported on. NXT in 2020 was gearing up for like a big on the road sort of I wouldn't call it a tour, but they were changing. I say we were changing our format to be more of a touring brand, right? And the idea was that starting in 2020, we were going to be the same as Raw and SmackDown, right? The idea was always third brand, right? They did that at Survivor Series. The NXT won the Survivor Series Battle of the Brands or whatever. So the whole idea, we'd just gotten TV. So now the whole idea was, okay, we're going to do house shows just like the main event, or just like the main roster does house shows, because we want to be a third brand. We want to be quote unquote main roster as well. So the idea was NXT's going on the road. And I think the format that we had was every other week, and it was going to be these loops of 3 or 4 towns, right? Similar to what we were doing already in NXT, but now instead of once a month with a rotating roster, that like, so ultimately it would boil down to, as a talent, you would end up doing like maybe 2 or 3, if you were a champion, 4 or 5 of these, these road loops every year. Now it was going to be, there was a list of 25 of us, let's say, that were considered quote unquote consistent TV talent, and then you would mix in others into the mix, but it was going to be every other week. And when you're wrestling an NXT style like that every other week, that's that's physically demanding, right? 3 or 4 matches a week every other week is a ton. With TV every single week, it's we were gearing up for the long haul, and me and Riddle were actually what we call in the business, quote unquote, married to each other, in terms of like, we were wrestling each other every single night on those loops. So there were some times, and again, I said it started in 2020. It did start, right? The pandemic didn't hit until March.
Yeah.
We did January and February, and then I think a little bit of March under that structure. And boy, was it taxing, right? We, like, I don't know how it would have played out in terms of how beat up we were and stuff like that, but like 2 months in, I was physically beat up. And not because Matt's like stiff or anything, but just because that NXT style demands like sort of high impact, high intensity every single night. And he and I were wrestling each other a lot. So yeah, so I've wrestled, just to not answer your question whatsoever. Yeah, I wrestled Matt Riddle quite a bit, and now I've got to do it, even more so on MLW, which is outstanding. Some of the guys that I've had multiple matches against that I've really, really enjoyed are like Alec Price comes to mind. Aaron Rourke comes to mind. I'm trying to list guys who I've wrestled who are like new. In terms of, I never wrestled them in WWE or before WWE or anything like that, because I've had a lot of great rematches too. Recently I got to wrestle Conan Lycan, which is a guy I've wanted to wrestle for a very long time. Jake Something I had multiple matches against, even though he and I think we tagged together before WWE. But yeah, so Calvin Tankman's another one I've had multiple matches against. I mean, these are the guys who are tremendously talented. All of them are going to end up, on television with a major company, if not already at some point in their careers. And I'm very much looking forward to the progress of all of them. And I'm sure I left plenty of guys out. I know I left plenty of guys out, but I can't sit here, and I wrestle 2 to 3 times a week. So, so after a year, the list is already at about 100 or 150. So yeah, it's been great. And I've been very fortunate to have some tremendous opponents along the way so far.
So then what's been the biggest difference between the WWE style of wrestling versus the style of wrestling that you're doing now?
Control, like I mentioned. WWE is a television product. I mean, there's times where it's not, right? If you're on a house show, or even like a main event, for example. You mentioned main event. I was on main event for a long time, and yeah, there's a structure, and yeah, you got to stick to the structure. If you're the first match, I can't remember the exact structure. I think it's, if you're the first match, you get 1 segment and it's 5 minutes. And if you're the second match, you get 2 segments and it's 5 plus 5. So like, what you get in terms of time, and you got to stick to the time, right? You can't just go over time or they'll edit a bunch of it out. And also, if you go over time, think about the fact that main event records like 10 minutes before Monday Night Raw comes on. So if you're going over time, they're like, get off the ring, like we need to start Raw. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, but just circling back to the question, control's a big portion of it, right? Like I there's a lot of trust that's instilled in me now, like even more. Like I had a lot of trust before WWE, but now even more so. Most promoters are like, hey, here's the amount of time we're kind of looking for. If you go a little long, no big deal. If you go a little short, no big deal. Kind of just go out there and do what you do, and they trust me to give the best performance that I do, which I appreciate, and I always reciprocate that trust because I never take a night off. I never take the easy way out or anything like that. That's just not the way my brain or my body operates. And maybe in a negative way in terms of my body and the the amount of impact that I put it through. But thankfully I feel healthy and I feel good as of right now, knock on wood. So yeah, the the trust that's instilled in me is a big piece of it. And I understand like why WWE has their producers, and they book the finishes and things like that. By book the finishes I mean like usually in a TV segment there's every match is a vehicle to get a storyline over, right? As opposed to just being a match to be a good match, which is what you get a lot on the independent scene. It's more of like, oh, well, you're feuding with this guy, so this guy's friend is going to run in, and he's going to do this thing, and we got to block the whole thing out, and that ends up being, half the match, right? When it boils down to the TV time and all this stuff. So in terms of that, you're just kind of like a puzzle piece that they're moving around. So that's it's fun to be part of the production, and obviously the audience is massive, and there's a huge outreach. But yeah, in terms of just having full sort of control over what happens in a match and having more time to do so, usually that's very enjoyable. Whereas in WWE, often I was very lucky because I was on a lot of premium live events, especially in my second run in NXT. So that usually more so is like, hey, you got 15 minutes, go do whatever you want. Here's the finish. And that's more similar to what you get every night on the independent scene. So as opposed to it just being like, 4 or 5 premium live events throughout the course of a couple of years, it's something that I get to experience every night. And that's really, sort of it's both fun and it helps you develop even more because we're always a development in progress.
I'm sure that you get told this all the time, but your last run in NXT was legendary. With WWE recently posting the Obafemi Briggs and yourself in the triple threat at Stand and Deliver, what does that match mean to you?
So, I mean, we knew going into that was going to be it was definitely the biggest show that I was ever on. Just because it's WrestleMania weekend. I had never been on a stand and deliver match before. And I knew that I wanted to have not just the best match on the show, but also the best triple threat match in WWE history. Right, that's the standard that I held for myself, and I think the other guys and the producers and everybody involved in the match, I think we all held ourselves to that standard as well. Um, so yeah, I mean the platform was big. Um, Internally, I it was even bigger for me because I knew that my contract was coming up soon, which everybody kind of publicly found out. Because I think Stand and Deliver was in April or May, and my contract was up in June. So I knew that it was big and important for me. Um, and I wanted to do that, just that. I wanted to deliver on the biggest platform and stage possible. So yeah, thankfully, triple threat matches for me have had gone from something that I didn't like and that I thought was difficult to do and not so enjoyable into a match type that I really enjoyed doing because there's so many opportunities there to do something unique that stands out. So over the course of time, and specifically over the course of time in WWE, um, it became something that I looked forward to very much because it became this sort of opportunity to be different than everybody else on the card, and I very much enjoyed that. So yeah, obviously those two guys are great. They're still doing a great job in NXT. I'm very happy and proud of both of them. And I'm very happy and proud of that match. I'm glad that it's free on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch it. And yeah, it's great. Um, it's it's not the last match I ever had in WWE. It's one of the last matches I ever had in WWE. I think following that, it was close to my final NXT match. I think my final NXT match was on TV 2 weeks later against Noam Dar, which was another great and memorable match. And then I had, I think, 2 main event matches and 1 speed match after that. So that it was very close to the end, just in terms of timing. But yeah, I'm super proud of it.
Do you know why WWE called you up and then released you? Like now looking back 1 year later, do you know why they might have done that?
I don't know, but I can make an educated guess just based on what I see and kind of the feel of things. So I mean, let's take the hypothetical scenario that they don't, right? Because that's the only other option. Either you do call me up or you don't call me up. So let's say that they don't. So what am I doing at that point? Am I in NXT? There was discussion. So there was a pitch on the table for me to feud with Trick, who is now the NXT champion. So you can't do that, right? If you know you're not going to renew my contract, you can't just put me in a title feud and then be like, "Oops, he's suddenly not under contract. Please don't, do something else." So that's probably not a viable solution. You could leave me in NXT and also do nothing to me, but that would be a very um it would be a strong indicator to me, right? For starters, like I'd be like, why did I go from uh you know having the best match, having the match of the year, to all of a sudden, benched and shelved for no reason in NXT? That would be very confusing. It would probably be very confusing to the fan base as well. They'd be like, what's going on here? So I think it just boils down to, it was the easiest avenue, in terms of, logistics, I guess. Because again, they're a business. They're not there to, you know, make me all comfy and cozy and make me happy and stuff. They're there to, do what's best for their business. So I assume it had something to do in that direction.
And so when you were in NXT, you trained under Shawn Michaels. And so was there something that he taught you in that final run that you're now using on the indies?
That's a good question. I mean, I learned a lot from Sean. More so when he was my direct coach at the Performance Center in 2019, 2020. Because in the second run, he was there and he was around and we spoke a lot. But it was less in like a feedback sort of thing and more of like uh he was the booker, he was he's the the director, so it was more like that. I'll say this. What I got a lot from Sean, and I think what I learned the most from him, is that there's always a way to put a creative spin on an already good idea. Because what I would get a lot from him that I won't say never, but what I got a lot from him, um, was always, I would pitch an idea to him and he would take a moment to think about it. And so for me, when I would pitch something to him and he'd think about it, my reflex was always, which was probably, conditioned by Vince, unfortunately, my reflex was always like, oh, he must be thinking of a way to politely tell me no, right? That's a thing that you'd get a lot from Vince. You get a lot from wrestlers. Wrestlers often who have more experience than me, which I experienced more on Monday Night Raw than I did on, even NXT to a certain extent, but mostly Monday Night Raw. When I say NXT, I meant the first run of NXT, not so much the second run. But And then obviously a lot early in my career, like Ring of Honor and things like that, where I was the new guy and most people had more experience than me. You experience this a lot where you pitch something and then the person starts thinking about it and you can tell that they're trying to like think of an alternative or like which is just like a nice way to be like, no, I don't like your idea. But you don't want to be a total jerk and be like, your idea sucks, go go fly a kite, right? So in pro wrestling you get that a lot, and you can see when someone's processing something, you're like, ugh, I don't think they like my idea or whatever. With Shawn, it was never that. It was never that. He would think about the idea and he would process it, and he would be like, what if we do your idea like this? And he would put a little spin on it, and I'd always be like, wow, that's significantly better than what I thought of. Like, you are a very creative person, and I appreciate you taking what I thought of and putting your own spin on it, right? So I do that as often as I possibly can as a professional wrestler, which was something I was doing before, but just to see him do it and the way that he went about doing it always influenced me in a very positive way, where I could say, I can be better at this, right? I can be even better at taking someone else's idea and putting my own spin on it, so that it's a collaborative effort, and then we both feel emotionally invested in whatever we're doing, and it feels like a joint effort where we can both contribute heavily, uh, both physically and mentally, to the performance. And to me, that was very special. I'll give you my most obvious example of this. We had a premium live event called Battleground. They just did it. This was 2 years ago though, so it's Battleground 2023. It's in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I wrestled Ilya Dragunov in a last man standing match. Um, and it was the week before. And I just had an idea, right? An idea popped in my head where I always see these people in their quote unquote hometown, and their like mom is sitting ringside and their family sitting ringside, and everybody gets hugs and kisses, and then they shoot the family while they're watching the thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice. And like, I'd love to have some sort of thing with my family, but I'm this villainous, horrible person the storyline was I was like torturing Ilya in this dungeon or whatever. And I was just beating the heck out of him. And I was trying to get him to like give up or whatever. Like, I need you to stay down or submit or whatever the storyline implication was there. And so in my mind, I'm like, how can I make that work? So I came to Shawn literally the week before, and I was like, can we do something? Because I live 20 minutes from that venue. Like, can we do something where my family's ringside, but we do it in like a mean way where I don't where I'm not like hugs and kisses and wish me luck, but I'm like I like tell them that it's going to be too violent or something, and I don't want my children to see it. And he thought about it for a moment. While he was thinking about it, I'm like, oh no, he doesn't like it. And then he came back to me with like, what if you look at your wife and you tell her to get out of there and take the kids with her? And I was like, oh, that's way better. That's way better than the original thought I had. So that's what we ended up doing. If you watch that match, it's my wife and my daughter, my son, and they're all in the front row, and I go over to them, and it doesn't take any more time, right? It's my normal entrance, but it's an extra like 10 seconds. So this was nothing production wise. It was just making this match feel more important to me, right? Maybe even the crowd didn't pick up on it. Like, right, maybe the fan. I know Vic is an awesome commentator, so he put it over on commentary. Because he and I are friends and we would talk constantly, and he was so good about that. Really, probably my favorite commentator that I've ever worked under, because he was so collaborative in that aspect, that he cared so much about telling our stories, and commentary is an important vehicle to do so. But yeah, it made the match more meaningful to me, right? Because I was able to include like a personal element into the violence of what was happening, and it just made it, it made it feel, bigger and more special to me. So I always appreciated that from Shawn specifically.
I remember at the time I didn't really watch NXT, and
Hmm.
so when I saw that clip on Twitter, because it went crazy,
Hmm.
of you saying that, I was like, I have to watch this match now because it's gonna be violent. You guys were both amazing. Last year I talked to you about your last pitch, and it was you wanted to be the vigilante, um, because Raw was going crazy, and
Yeah.
so Ricochet just got taken out. You wanted to be, that guy that kind of put everybody straight. Do
Yeah.
you still do that? Like, do you still watch when you watch WWE? You go, oh, I could fit in there. Oh, I could fit in there.
Oh, it's funny that you say that. I I was um so just for context sake, um I don't want to make this a huge story, but when I got out of college, I was watching pro wrestling because that's what I did before I was in college, and a little bit before I started sports, full time and things like that. So pro wrestling has always been what I do and watch in my free time. Then when I got into the business, it became even more important to me to watch WWE consistently weekly because that's where I wanted to be, right? And I felt like it was almost my job and my obligation to keep up with it. Plus I liked it. I love watching pro wrestling. I watch pro wrestling every night. It's just what I do with my free time. I enjoy it and I love it. Um so when I got to WWE, now even more so, like now it's literally my job to like this company's paying me. I should be completely aware and inundated into what's happening with all brands, all things. So I would watch all of it constantly. And even more so when I got called up to Raw. It's like, well, now I'm literally here. So now I'm even on the usually I would stay at the arena, but even on the chance that I had to go somewhere or I wanted to get a head start or catch a flight or whatever, I would turn it on my phone and I had like a service where I could stream Raw on my phone and I would just watch it, or if I was driving, I would listen to it, right? It became such a part of my life that I had to know every single thing that was going on. So when the day came and I was no longer with WWE, I couldn't just stop that. So I was still watching, still my mind was still racing and pitching things. And after 2 or 3 months, I was like, this is incredibly unhealthy for my mental health. Like this is very not good. Like I'm watching this show that I'm not on, and my brain is racing about things that I can be involved in, and all of that just leads to depression because I can't do it, right? It's literally been taken from me. It was something that I wanted that was taken from me. So so I had to sort of wean off of it, which I did. I started watching like less and less of it. I started doing other things while I was watching Raw. Um, NXT was the hardest. NXT was the hardest. I because I was very close with all those people. Um, and I was so heavily invested in the product and the storylines, like the storylines that are on my television. Because I'm sitting here, I'm sitting on this couch. There's a TV in front of me, and this is where I would watch the show. And the storylines that are happening in front of me are storylines that like I helped develop and produce, right? Like Trick Williams is the NXT champion. I had a huge part in the storyline of Trick becoming NXT champion, right? So I want to see how that plays out because I'm literally emotionally invested in what's happening on a level that most fans, not most fans, all fans are not involved in terms of that. So yeah, that was the hardest part. But I knew I needed to stop just for my own mental health. So now I do a better job of just keeping up with it like on my phone. Cause again, I, I I'm still friends with these people, right? I still talk to all these people all the time, right? We text, we talk, all of this stuff, right? So I don't want to just abandon my care for my friends and my, you know, enjoyment to want to see them succeed and do well and things like that. Um, so yeah, so now I keep up with it mostly via social media because that's just easier for me to digest. It's easier for me to see a clip or a GIF or a recap or whatever and say, oh, so and so is doing very well, and I can send them a congratulatory text or whatever, and I can see what happened without actually having to watch the nitty gritty, minute by minute of it and like get totally absorbed into what's happening because now I can invest my time and my effort into things that I am, part of, right? So now I can watch all my friends on the independence matches, and I can watch those shows, and I can watch the shows that I've been on, and give feedback in that. And I'm I run online classes, so I'm able to give feedback for a lot of those people, and the students that I work with at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy send me matches, so I watch those, and I break them down and give feedback and things like that. So that's where it's a lot easier to apply myself in my own matches. I watch a lot of my own matches back and things of that nature. So yeah, in that aspect, I've sort of taken one product of pro wrestling and shifted another one into it. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yes, I do still do that, but I need to like actively try to avoid doing it, right? Because it's a mental burden, right? It is. But yeah, that's that's sort of my approach to it now, and it's going a lot better, right? I don't I have something else to focus on, so that's a lot more meaningful to me.
And you bring up your wrestling school. That's, I think,
Mhm.
the coolest concept I've ever seen because
Thank
like people always say join a wrestling school, join a wrestling school. But
you.
then like if you're a Roxanne Perez, you want to travel so far to Booker T's
Mhm.
school. But for some of these people that maybe they just want to like test out the waters and talk to a pro wrestler,
Mhm.
you're there, your outlet is there. Can you tell me what was your inspiration behind starting that school?
So my inspiration was actually my acting coach, Howard Fine. He he has his own online class that I heavily researched before I joined it, because I wanted to learn acting from the best acting coach in the world. And he is, in my opinion, the best acting coach in the world, and I'm extremely thankful that he offers his services via an online class, which is the same format that I use. It's an interactive Zoom format, and structurally, I wanted to use the format that he used because I found it so productive, right? So I basically just took the because when I'm taking his classes, I'm like, wow, there's so many parallels to pro wrestling here. This would be an excellent service for professional wrestlers, and nobody really provides it at in this dynamic, right? So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take that dynamic and shift it over to professional wrestling, and so far it's been very positive. I think there was a little, it was mostly positive at the beginning, but there's a little bit of hesitancy and a little bit of this narrative of like, you can't learn how to be a pro wrestler online. And I think people kind of understand now that that's not what I'm doing. That's not the point of this. I'm pretty clear on the website and in like interviews like this that this is not a way to like, you're not going to finish my course and be ready to have a match. That's not how this works. Obviously, I think most people with a a functioning brain understand that you can't learn to be a like, you can't have a full, you can't have matches just from talking about it. You need to get in the ring and learn how to bump and learn how to hit the ropes. I think people understand that. But what I offer as a service is to learn how to be a professional wrestler, right? That's what it's, and it's, I understand there's semantics in there, and it's hard to sort of get the full message in just a tagline. So it's right. So you need to go into a little bit of detail to figure out exactly what I'm offering. But yeah, ultimately what it is the things we can't do physically in person, right? Because obviously there's components of it that you do need to do physically in person. Like, I need to teach you to grab the wrist and take the proper, steps and hit the mat this way, and like, I can talk about it, and we do. I have a class where I talk about the physicality and the portions of that. But obviously you need to do it to get the experience to be able to apply it. Um and yet, but mostly what we talk about is the psychology of professional wrestling, right? What's the mindset? What's the what's how do I tell a story? What are the types of stories that we tell? What's the usual format to telling those stories? Things like that. So I think people really enjoy that depth, because quite frankly, it's the kind of depth that you can't necessarily get from just anybody, right? Um, eh, you can get it to a certain extent, but like, I have a lot of experience that that I've been very fortunate to have, right? You mentioned I've trained with Shawn Michaels, I've trained with The Undertaker, I've trained with Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, like the list goes on, and that's just the people who like dropped in, right? I was full time with Steve Carino, Scotty Too Hottie, Norman Smiley, like just an endless list, and that's not even taking into account the seminars that I did. I had seminars with Harley Race, I did seminars with Marufuji, right? Just all over the world. I traveled to England to train with Johnny Moss before he was with WWE. I drove all the way to Florida to train with Off the Wild Samoan. So the list of names that have given me knowledge over the course of time to build this sort of uh, database of information that I can give back to people in terms of the storytelling and the psychology and just my own experiences from professional wrestling. Um, because the guys I listed are just the trainers that I trained with. That's not even including like Randy Orton, who I got to wrestle, John Cena, who I got to wrestle, Finn Balor, who I got to wrestle. You know, there's the endless list of guys that I was able to work with in the ring and receive feedback from afterwards. So yeah, in terms of what I want to provide, it goes way beyond just, hey, like here's how to take a bump and hit the ropes, and here's what the structure of match is. Because yeah, I can go into that, but really that's the kind of thing that, you know, lots of people can give you detail on. What I can give you detail on is going really in depth into the storytelling aspects, and, you know, making things believable and make sense, and what the mindset of those things are. That's what I want to, because that's what I got from Howard, right? Lots of people can give you can Google like, how do I act, and what are the things of acting, what are the principles of acting, but you don't really get the depth of how does this work and what is my mindset until you talk to someone like Howard Fine, right? And when I was getting all of that feedback from him, I'm like, this guy is such an expert. And in my mind, I'm like, I can provide this in the realm of professional wrestling, and I want to provide it because it's not only an opportunity for me to teach, it's also an opportunity for me to get feedback from people and learn myself and continue to progress my mind in the world of professional wrestling. So that's what I try to implement at the Dijak Wrestling Academy, which is available at dijakwrestling.com.
There you go. Uh, Final question. I want to thank you for being so generous with your time. I know we're going a little over, but
That's okay.
yeah, is there a world where we see Dijak in a major promotion? You know, we have TNA who has
Mhm.
that route, you know, back to NXT, but then we also have AEW. You were talking about last year that you appeared at an AEW show backstage, or it got leaked or something. But regardless, is there an avenue that you see that you want to go back, or are you just having fun with your indie career?
Yeah, I try not to worry too much about stuff that's out of my control. You know, so much of my pro wrestling career has been out of my control for so long, because that's just the nature of it, right? In terms of whether it's booking, in terms of whether it's contracts, things like that. A lot of it is just like, hey, here's what it is, and do the best you can, and then you do the best you can, and then it's like, oh, okay, good job. Here's a little more. Do the best you can with that, right? So now it's more so in my hands, which I really, you know, obviously we just to circle back to the beginning, that's a lot of what, you know, is helpful for me, um, both mentally and from a career standpoint. Yeah, so for me, I'm not in a I'm not trying to push anything or rush anything. It would need to be the right place at the right time. Obviously, so so yeah, right now the right place and the right time for me is MLW. That's what's going very well for me. They've had extremely great communication. I've communicated with them very clearly and concisely. They've communicated with me very clearly and concisely, and we're all on the same page, and I very much appreciate that. So I'm doing my best to to uh to do what I do at MLW, which is, you know, take the vision and give the best possible output that I possibly can. And that's what my mindset has always been. That's what it's going to continue to be. And you know, so far it's been excellent with MLW. You mentioned the Matt Riddle matches already. We've had a lot of great matches, but also great storylines, great promos, things like that. There's a great relationship with CMLL that I was just in Arena Mexico a few weeks ago now. So yeah, it's firing on all cylinders, and I'm very excited for the future.
There was a small pitch about Retribution getting back together last year, right?
From
Or
who?
I don't know. It was like, oh, maybe Retribution get back together in AEW, but I don't.
Very unlikely.
I don't think you want to change your name back to T-Bar or anything like that.
No, definitely not change my name back to T-Bar. The So Ali's full time with TNA as far as I know, so that's off the table. I think Shane is full time with New Japan, so I'm pretty sure he's off the table. um, Brennan is Mace. He's in AEW, but he's doing something different. So they would need to completely blow that up, which I doubt they're interested in doing. Yeah, maybe last year we were all on the table, but now definitely not. Mia for sure is not. She's signed to WWE, so that's not happening. Yeah, yeah, not anytime soon. That being said, if you wanted for whatever, because 5 contracts all lining up at the same time is a very rare thing in professional wrestling. But if the opportunity ever arose, um, there, if done right, think about the way that the human psyche works, right? To take something that wasn't done well and to get a second chance at it and do it properly, because there was never an issue with the personnel in the group, right? We were all happy with the human beings who were doing it. We're all outstanding professional wrestlers. We're all friends. We're all great people to be around. It was just the creative that was being given to us every week. We were like, oh my God, like, how do we fix this? How do we make this work? So, so to get like another opportunity to be with those people and do something special, we would knock it 10 times out of the park if a company wanted to give us that chance. Lining up 5 contracts is a massive ask, right? So who knows whether that's a possibility or not, but yeah, like it's not like it was funny. And this might I'm going to watch my wording very carefully here so I don't stick my foot in my mouth and get a
Yeah.
quote tweet that gets all viral and angry about me. um Last night I saw a tweet from Wade Barrett where somebody asked him to reform the League of Nations, and it was just the gif of the puppet from that movie vomiting everywhere. So like it's not one of those situations where there's members of the group who people don't want to be associated with and things like that anymore. We're all still friends, we all still talk, and we're all still, very fond of each other, both as, human beings and as professionals. So I'm sure we would all be for it, given the correct platform and creative, obviously.
I want to thank you for joining me, man.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. We
Good.
we did this a year ago.
Yes.
Now we're very different people. So seriously,
Yeah.
thank you for making the time for me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.